and we are right here at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started today. Welcome to the Platform Academy. We're thrilled to start the session off right here at the top of the hour. I'm Sharon Barnes, your Platform Outbound Product Manager and today's host, and we have an incredible session lined up that I cannot wait for us to dive in. I'm really excited for John and the product he's telling us about. But before we get started, let me share just a few of those quick logistics. These presentations are crafted with you in mind. Our goal is to inspire you with those fresh ideas, practical use cases that help elevate your understanding of our platform tools. So feel free to fire away with your questions during the presentations. Just remember, post them in the Q&A session so that our amazing panelists can address those. Plus, don't worry if you miss something. The session is being recorded and will be available on our community forum for the Platform Academy. Plus, we want to ensure your voices are heard. So after the event, there's going to be a quick survey that helps us improve our content for everyone. So please take time to fill that out. And of course, just a quick reminder to practice safe harbor. We might share some new or exciting features today, so let's keep everything compliant with those best practices. And now let's get to the good stuff. I am thrilled to introduce our fantastic speaker, John Lind, who's going to take us on a journey through the new way to deploy code in ServiceNow with ReleaseOps. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to John Lind. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I really appreciate it, and I am excited to be sharing ReleaseOps with you all. I am a outbound product manager for the ReleaseOps product, and I have been in the ecosystem 13 or 14 years now. Started in Berlin as a customer, and I remember when I first started, I had a dev test prod environment. Pretty straightforward. There was 2 developers. Uh, we managing our updates wasn't that big a deal. We did a release most Friday mornings, do a little kind of ad hoc testing, and it wasn't that big a deal. But as we probably most of us on this call have probably experienced, uh, managing update sets, moving things around from environment to environment, managing multiple developers, potentially more instances than just 3. Especially multiple dev instances. It gets complicated really quickly. And I like to kind of joke that in the United States that this problem we're trying to solve here is almost of legal drinking age. It's about a 20-year-old problem. And we're finally trying to address that to make the process of deployment run more smoothly. So the to get started, we'll talk a little bit. I'd like to talk to you a little bit and get your feedback on what it is like, your experience with making deployments on the platform. Do you find it easy? Do you find it tolerable? Or do you find it a total pain? So I'm interested in your feedback. It's interesting. I'm getting a little bit more of the medium answers than I would have expected. So that's very intriguing, very interesting. But yeah, so the challenge we were trying to solve is something that's been pretty consistent for most customers, and that is just when you're doing your application deployment, um, you do your dev work, you need to, you may want to introduce practices like manual approvals, ATF testing, instance scans, deployment analysis, which is a feature that we'll talk about here in a minute. And then you've got to deploy all of that stuff, and you want to make sure that it's clear what's happening, that the processes are consistently followed, and that the results are consistent in each time you run the deployment. And that can be difficult to do if you're doing it all manually. So we release ops is a concept of kind of a simple process as well as the automation aspects. You may know that there's a lot of integration spokes and toolkits that we offer to allow people to build kind of custom solutions to move between environments. A lot of people will integrate with change requests or with agile stories and that type of thing to manage the process itself. And then we've got this toolkit of integrations if you want to move update sets around. Some people will go to Jenkins and build, kind of sophisticated deployment processes to build things and transfer them between environments. And we wanted to give both a lightweight process, which is a deployment request and a release, as well as that automation. So the idea of a deployment request, and we'll cover a couple of these concepts before we jump into the demo, but the idea of the deployment request is that it is developer initiated. And so when a developer is done with work, we don't want them to have to call somebody or send an email or maybe log in a test and manually deploy it, then let the QA person know, hey, it's ready for testing, or get together and try to coordinate, okay, well, we had all these developers working on a bunch of different things and bundle them all up, we get them to test and try to manually kind of keep track of all of that stuff. We want the developer to be able to say, hey, look, I'm done with this block of work. They can submit it. It can start up the process on the way to production, testing, etc. And then they can move on to their next job. And a release is basically the analogy even my colleagues like to use is a train. So you may have and a deployment request is kind of a car. So you may have a release scheduled on a certain day of the week, certain days of the month. You create all those deployment requests, you bundle them up, and you add them to the release. And then that release, when it's ready to go, the date comes around, it will fire off and automatically deploy to prod. As a disambiguation, though, there is the SDLC release, the software development lifecycle release, which is a product that's been around for a while. And though we use the same term, it is not the same thing. So be careful with that. Okay, cool. So it looks like Sharon, looks like we got the results here. It looks like we got 27% find it super easy. That's cool. That's good. About 58% find it kind of moderate. It works well enough. And 15% consider it the worst part of their week. So I will say that language was a little harsh, but yeah, that's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. So I'll be frank, I thought it would be skewing a little bit more towards the negative, but that's good. That's good. And I think we've got something here that will be able to help those almost anybody on the platform. We want this to work for everybody. And my dream is here in a year or two. Um, this will be the default way that you manage deployments. If you get a brand new instance or a new customer, you drop into your new set of instances, and this will be ready to go for you. Uh, for the rest of us, there may be some migration, maybe some customization needed, and we'll get into kind of how it works and how the customizations and that types of thing might work. So thank you, Sharon. I think we are done with that poll, and we can move on. Yeah, so the last little bit here before we start the demo is just it's a little visualization, but this red circle on the left, we want the developers to be able to build, push, deploy, debug, keep that inner loop running smoothly, quickly, without a lot of blocks or barriers. Um, and then the right-hand side is basically the process of actually deploying up to prod. So we want to make this left-hand inner loop clean and simple and easy. Developers can work, build, push their deployment request out, and then move on to the next project, onto the next story. And once with the release managers decide, okay, here's all the things that are going into our release. We want to very easily take the outputs of the inner loop and then start, deploy to prod, make sure testing is completed, make sure requirements are met, and be able to do that in a smooth, consistent way. So yeah, let's get to it. We are going to do this. This is going to be a simple, kind of a simple type of demonstration, but we are going to show you from end to end all the pieces that go into making a release, a deployment request, and then moving that up through the environments. So the first part of this is we will need a release. And I'm going to create a new release here. The release is pretty lightweight. This is going to be so I'm going to call it Platform Academy November release. You can imagine a scenario where many of our customers have, scheduled releases every Thursday at 2 o'clock. We do our releases, or every other week we do a release. This could be your release calendar. You could potentially build a set of these stretching out into the future for the next few months. So you've got that on your calendar, and then you can kind of have a clear view of when your opportunities are to deploy, to not deploy. We do have a kind of a lightweight change request integration at this level. So it could be associated, this release could be associated with a change request. what it does at this point is it basically just ties the dates together so that the release date would match the change request. Very lightweight and very simple. And it's also an opportunity for customization to match your processes. But in this case, we're not going to do that. And the freeze date is kind of I'll lay off the train analogies after this, but it's kind of the release date's kind of the date that the train's leaving the station, and the freeze it's kind of the last time that you can board. We want to say, okay, let's make sure all of our deployment requests are complete, tested, approved, etc. before that freeze date. And if it exceeds the freeze date, that's an opportunity for us to perhaps move it to another release. And then the release date is the time that this particular deployment automation will kick in, fire off, and push it up to prod. So I'm going to set, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to set the freeze date about an hour out. So it'll be 11. And then I'm going to set the release date about 2 hours out. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to submit. And I close this, refresh, cool. And there you can see, here's my release. Okay, because I'm a lazy developer and I'm really bad about procrastinating, I've only got an hour till this freeze date pops around, but I'm gonna go do my work right now. I gotta get it in before the freeze. So I'm going back to dev. And the first thing I do is I am going to create an update set. So in this particular case, I'm doing it in global. That's not here. It doesn't really matter. It works great with scope taps as well. But in this particular case, for this little demo, I'm just going to make a global an update set in the global change in the global space. So I'm going to call this the platform. Cool. Then I am going to yeah, it's instant migration. Cool, cool, cool. Another convention, of course, that a lot of us use is, oops, I misspelled it, is to name the update sets after stories. For example, story numbers, that's a great idea too. I don't think there's any need to change that. So I'll show you here in a second. We will actually have an audit trail from the update sets back to the stories potentially. Back to the deployment request, which then could be linked to a story. So this may not be necessary in the future, but I still think it's not a bad way to do things, and it's a tradition that a lot of us, I believe, are used to. But in this case, I'm going to save this update set, and I am going to make it current. Cool. So I need to go create a fix script to so. And then in here, I would do my code or call my script include. I'm just going to do GS info. And I am going to submit this. And now I'm going to go back to my update set. And again, this is a workflow you're probably familiar with. We didn't, this first release, we did not intend to radically change how the tools worked, how the underlying technology worked. We wanted to give, again, a kind of a structured process and some automation around it. We do have some ideas for the future to really streamline things, refine things, improve some of the core technology. But for now, this is going to probably be fairly close to a lot of the processes that you're used to, especially from the developer experience. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And you'll see we've got this new button called Promote Update Set. I'm going to hit that. And now, if you look really closely at the URL up here, you'll see that it says Pipeline Prod 1. And the way this works is, and I'll show you a little diagram here in a second. The way this works, though, is that the prod environment coordinates all the activities between the lower environments. And this way, by giving very minimal access to developer only needs the access to on prod to access this record producer. Um, with that access, they're able to basically do whatever they need to do, and then the tool will take over from there. So I'm going to create a new deployment request, and cool, it's assigned to me. The source environment is pipeline dev one, and I'm going to go ahead and attach it to that release. Um, the Platform Academy November release. In this particular case, I know that's where it's going. This could be optional, though. It may be that you just want to submit all of those deployment requests up there and then later on compose those into releases. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and attach it. The other important thing is that at this point, I could attach an ATF test suite to this. In this example here, I'm able to manually choose one, but I could attach an ATF test. With automation, you could build business rules and processes to automatically attach it based on certain criteria. I'm going to go ahead and skip it. I will admit that it does add about 10 minutes to the process. And so for the interest of the timing on this demonstration, I'm going to skip that. Excellent. So there's my deployment request. There's only one more thing I need to do as a developer, and that is that when I'm ready to assess, that I want to deploy it to test, run the ATF tests, uh, do all those things. I wait until that's ready and then I hit the ready to assess button. So in this example, there may be multiple update sets. So maybe I need to go do some more work. Uh, and then in that case, I could just close this window. But in my case, one update set, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit ready to assess. And you'll see that the state changed to ready to assess by me. And then the system has changed it to assessing and has started moving the update sets to pipeline test one. I'm going to go ahead and leave this open so we can come back and see it later. And this will take 7-8 minutes. So we'll let this run in the background. While that's happening, I'd like to go kind of examine the example I'm showing is extremely simple and it's obviously a very happy path. And we get that feedback from our customers a lot when we're demonstrating it. Which is fair, right? We all know that in the real world, it's not that easy. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you uh, some releases that did not actually go maybe exactly to plan. So I'm looking here at my recent releases. See, most of these were completed. The active ones means that there's an issue, there's a opportunity to continue adding code to it, and then we've got some that have failed, right? The uh, a more complex scenario it would be, let me see, there's a good one here. It was one like this. So this is reconciling. So let's go look at this. Cool. So this particular release encapsulates several different applications and scopes with multiple deployment requests. And if we scan through, we try to be very verbose in the activity log. So if we scan through the activity log of this release, we can see that it's just associated with this change request. It was preparing for the code freeze. Um, the release date changed to ready for deployment. But it looks like there was a deployment request here that didn't make it. So what happened is it went to freezing, but this one wasn't ready. So it kind of got kicked out. It's not going to be able to be deployed with this release. And you'll see that its state is reconciling and that it's checked as deferred, right? And that just indicated that this one was not ready and it would need to be moved to a different release. Another situation that could happen is we'll see that, hey, there were preview conflicts for this other one, DR01124. So this is a situation where there was a conflict detected while doing the deployment test, and that would need to be investigated. So if I look at I can look down here at the history, was successfully moved to pipeline test, and there was a preview problem. So you can see the preview problem. So the nice thing I like about this is I can just click on that link and it takes me straight to it, right? In the old days, I would have to go log into test, go hunt for it, figure out what happened, etc. Uh, but in this particular situation, I can, if I was a developer, I could set up a notification, have the developers get a notification, just kick off the job, and then when this happens, I'd see this, open up the DR, and go straight to the issue, and then I could use my available actions to resolve it. The other important thing is when one of these things happens, a deployment request task is created. And this task basically is the workflow element that says, hey, I need to do something to solve this. And so perhaps I go through there and I decide to, it's a skip remote, right? Because someone had made a change in task off cycle and they shouldn't have, or directly and they shouldn't have. So I decide to overwrite the one in test. Well, I can just make that decision. Then I will just update the deployment task to say, hey, I took care of this. You may also decide that you need to take it back to dev. And there'd be an option in that case to say uh, more code needed, right? Click that button, kind of resets the whole DR. I could go back to dev, do my work, and then assign it to that deployment request so that the problem is patched. And then once that whole thing is done and tested, then it can move on. Uh, and then the last thing on this particular one was that the uh, for this deployment request is we'll go back, or this release. And so we had three deployment requests. One of them failed to make it in because of timing. Another one had an issue. And lastly, this one succeeded. So if the AutoDoc bot initial release was fine, we won't stop it. We figure that deployment request is fine. There's no reason to stop it just because one of the other ones failed. So I'm a little curious. Let's go back and see how this is doing. Okay, cool. That was pretty quick. So the code change I just um, made it to test and is now ready to be deployed. That means that if I return to my release here, I can about my deployment requests. It is ready for deployment. Cool. And then I am going to go ahead and cheat. The way this works is, again, at the release date, when the release date happens, job kicks off, does the deployment. I've got a little button that I created myself that's just going to force those dates to the immediate future. And I am going to, yep, there we go, 1025, yep, 24, cool. Yeah, and so here in a couple minutes that this should kick off. This deployment should kick off. So while we wait on that, um, I will show us kind of, you know, uh, the big thing that for pretty much all of our customers, of course, is that the sample pipeline, dev test prod. We want to give you something functional, right? In the old days, it was either kind of do it manually or again, take a big toolkit and start building your own big, Rube Goldberg deployment machine. And again, there's some value to that. Customers with very sophisticated processes may want to continue to do that. And we're not necessarily suggesting that people migrate off of an existing solution if it's working well for them at this point. But we want those people who just dropped in, they're new customers, or they don't have an automated process and they want to start adopting it to have something to start with, right? But we also understand with releases, not one size fits all. We've got uh, different types of processes that, change management, uh, application lifecycle management, agile, different types of project management. There's just that process side of as on one thing, as well as different processes for testing and authentication and authorization. It's testing and validation and that type of thing, right? UAT testing, that those types of requirements are necessary in different environments for different customers. And then, of course, there's different tooling and different environments that need to be moved to. So to support that, we wanted to create something that would kind of give you something functional out of the box that you could then build on. So we wanted it to be opinionated and functional, but also flexible. I'm going to give you a little bit of, you can start seeing this, some activities happening over there. So it's ready for deployment, states changing. Cool. So to do that, we created we're utilizing a technology called the multi-instance management framework. And what this is basically a hub and spoke model where you have a central hub that manages the rest of your instances. Generally speaking, it's going to be prod as your controller, and that's going to coordinate all the activities on the other environments. So, as my niece likes to say, I'm the boss of you. With multi-instance management framework, Controller can say, hey, I'm the boss of you dev, I'm the boss of you test. Those instances can then acknowledge and accept that the management request and then become part of that network. And in this way, all of the activities are being managed, except for one, we'll talk about here in a second, but all the activities are being managed from the controller instead of having to have, workflows that happen on all the other instances. And it just gives them a way to communicate, the prod to communicate with the lower instances and manage those deployments. Um, the pipeline is the deployment instances, and you can see that's configured in prod as well. You tell it, hey, dev, test, and prod are the three instances that are part of my pipeline, for example. Um, and that's all configured in prod. Um, the one thing that does deviate from this a little bit is we are still using, even though we use multi-instance management framework for all the coordination, actually pulling the update sets. We're using the traditional update sources or remote instances. And I think a lot of folks are probably used to this and may already have these things configured in their environment. But in a traditional setup with these green lines, test reaches out to dev and pulls update sets. Controller reaches out to test and pulls update sets. We've added one extra step that goes straight from prod to dev, and that's for the deployment analyzer. The deployment analyzer is a tool that allows you to set rules on the types of or evaluate the types of changes and the risk level of the types of changes. We won't get to that in this instance, but you would be in this session, but you would be able to set up rules and say, for example, if I have a customer service product model change, that shouldn't require a full code test. And so therefore, I can analyze that update change, make sure it's only got simple, like non-breaking type changes in it. Another example might be if you're doing like language files, right, for messages and that type of thing in different languages. You might want to be able to release those language files without full regression testing and full analysis, right? So anyway, the deployment analyzer can look at a deployment and say, hey, does this have risky files or not? If not, you could maybe bypass some of your processes and get it out more quickly. Okay, cool. Okay, nice. And so our the deployment to prod was completed on for our little November release here. So I know this is a lot. So now the next poll, if we could bring this up, Sharon, is I'm kind of interested in what are the processes that you use? What are the processes and tools that you use? And cool. Yeah. So the first one is kind of what processes do you use to manage a release? And that would be not necessarily tooling, but change requests, agile stories, spreadsheets, whatever. How do you keep track of your work? How do you keep track of your assignments? How do you keep track of the status of your projects? And the second part is like, then what tools do you use to support it? Do you use a run book where you with a spreadsheet with a bunch of steps, deploy this, then do that? Do you send chat messages to coordinate? Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just interested in kind of what the tooling and the processes that you currently use are, because we want to incorporate that into the future of the product. Cool, thank you. Yeah, and so finally, the last step here, we'll look into kind of, as we said, we want this to be configurable. We don't want to be too locked down. So we're going to look at how the workflow and the processes can be changed. We have uh, built this heavily on using playbooks. And of course, playbooks are a way to coordinate any user interface for uh, basically flows, subflows, and actions. And so we decided to build this heavily on playbooks. We want you to be able to take one of these. Now, if you decide that you have a custom flow that you need, what we would encourage you to do is to take one of these and clone it. We prefer to clone it versus modifying in place. That way, at least if you'll have that pipeline available if you need to inspect it or understand kind of what changes have come. And we also plan on releasing over time more sophisticated, different sorts of use cases as new playbooks, right? That wouldn't affect your own environments or your own playbooks. So the core one that moves from dev to test is this deployment request assessment. So let's look at this one. So yeah, as you can see, it is triggered by a business rule, and you can go look at the business rules. But there's a business rule that fires based on a state change. When I say ready to assess, it triggers this business rule, which then kicks off this deployment request assessment. And then it changes the state to assessing. And here's where the meat of it is. This is the part that actually moves the update set to test. And you can see you've got configuration where you're able to specify, okay, here's the source instance, the destination instance, which DR is being moved, et cetera, right? And this way, we've got this nice visual way to coordinate our workflow. The next step, or stage, as you can see, is running ATF tests. And so it will fire off any ATF tests that are attached. If any of those tests have an issue, it will transition the state to reconciling, and it'll create a failure task. And that failure task is what you can then use to handle that particular case. In an ATF test case, you may decide, hey, look, I need some new code. Again, you can reset the DR, go back, make your changes, fix it, send it back up. Or you may decide, hey, look, this test failure is understood. We're going to go ahead and override it and let it go anyway without that test failure being resolved. So, but you've got documentation and you've got a mechanism to kind of force it to keep moving. And then again, this is a fairly simple flow. So as you can see, just after that's complete, it goes straight to ready for deployment. You have the opportunity, if you'd like to insert custom actions and stuff in here. And like I said, the way to do that is we suggest that you duplicate it and then you work on your version of it. But you could insert custom activities, custom integrations, certain approval type steps. All of that stuff could be integrated here yourself. And the other one, the last one we'll look at, and then we can start taking questions, will be the overall release deployment. So the one that I showed you was kind of a sub playbook that takes it from dev to test. But this is the overall process for the entire release. And once it's transitioned to ready for deployment, it'll wait for the go live date. So keep an eye on that schedule for the go live date. And then it will kick off the actual deployment. So it transitions to deploying, does the release deployment, evaluates the status. Hopefully everything's great, in which case it's done. Otherwise, if there's a fail, it will give you the notification and it'll give you the notifications and details on that. So cool. So we got our results back. And yeah, so it looks like a lot of folks use change requests. That's 78%. Stories, yep. Agile, Jira, that's cool. Spreadsheets, I'm so sorry. Winging it. Good for you, man. I love it. Sometimes I like to live life on the edge, just do myself, be my coder, hack it out. So that's cool. That's cool. No judgment here. And then, yeah, cool. Runbooks. Yeah, runbooks are popular. Chats, custom automations. Okay, interesting. 13%. Third-party integrations. Cool. Automated testing. Great. That's good to see. That's good to see. We got a pretty good turnout on automated testing. We will be having another Platform Academy here in a couple weeks to cover automated testing and dig into that a little more deeply with how it works with ReleaseOps with my colleague Yinka and manual steps. Yep, that's part of almost everybody's. It's only half, but I'm surprised it's a part of a lot of people's and manual notifications. Yep. Cool. Yeah, so neat. So three of you, about two-thirds of you have the dev test prod, and then another third or so have four more instances. Okay, that's great. That is excellent. Thank you so much. Cool. Yeah, so I that's it. Oh, one more thing. Actually, that's not it. One more thing. I do want to give you a little preview. I decided not to demo it because it's not going to be available for another couple months, but coming soon. You might have noticed
This
it's
is
a
our
bunch of
safe
lists.
harbor element. I love
Yes, definitely
it.
safe harbor. That's right. That's definitely safe harbor. So you might have noticed it's just a bunch of listen forms. And so it's not the world's funnest demo to give or watch. It's like, but we were focused on the core functionality versus the UI. But coming soon, and on the Australia release, there will be a version of App Engine Management Center that is free. So even if you're not an App Engine customer, there will be a version of App Engine Management Center that is we're calling it freemium, and it will include functionality and tools for managing your pipelines and deployments. Some of you may be familiar with the traditional AMC pipelines. These are going to be very soon are going to be deprecated and replaced and migrated to the new ReleaseOps pipelines. So if you're using App Engine Management Center, you'll be picking up the ReleaseOps features, and this will also give you some really a much prettier view of kind of what's happening and how it works. You can see releases, upcoming, completed, uh, then yeah, 8 on demand, 35 scheduled, the developers who are working on these projects. It'll give you that sort of visibility into your releases, deployments, etc., and give you a much nicer user experience and better control as well. So cool. So that is it for the demo. I'd love to. I know I've been talking for half an hour here, so to. I would love for the chance to talk to you about your experiences. Have any questions? What would you like to know about release ops?
And they have a good set of questions set up for you. Shall we go on through those?
Let's do that. Yeah.
All right. First, they say it was not the same as SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle Release,
Yep.
but it sounds very, very similar to it or almost the same. Is this a different application that overlaps conceptually, or like how do they connect, compare, contrast?
It is it is a very good question, and it got to where I was asked it so often that I realized I needed to put it on my slide so I didn't forget. Um, so the SDLC, yeah, conceptually, I think they're very similar, and they could even be complementary. Um, I think an SDLC release is basically saying we're releasing version again 1.8.2 of an app, right? And here's everything. Here's all the stories, the work that went into building that quote unquote release, that version, right? Our release is more about, it should almost be called deployment. Our release is more about the act of migrating it. So, for example, our release could have multiple SDLC releases in it, right? So those releases for the SDLC release for version 1.8.2 might be a series of update sets that are part of a DR that then go out in a release ops release. Does that make sense? Because I think the SDLC release is more of kind of organizational, and our release is more operational in terms of deploying. And frankly, I kind of wish it was called a deployment. That's probably a better way to think of it.
Naming is hard.
Yeah, I actually did a check, and in my instance, I don't even have all the different apps. There's like 17 tables that have the word release in their name, so it's yeah, it can be confusing.
All right, our next question is how does this work? In other words, sort of where is that work happening? Dev, test, prod? Where do you start by like creating the release?
Okay, yeah. So you create the release in prod. It depends on your model. A lot of customers have a kind of a release manager concept who would be responsible for creating those releases. And you would create those releases in prod. Once those releases are created in prod, you can leave them deactive. And an unactive release would be one that you weren't allowed to add code to. So in that model, perhaps you've got, again, you want to just pre-plan your schedule 6 months out. So you go create all the releases once a week for the next 6 months, but you may want to activate them on a rolling basis and say, hey, look, it's we're for the next 2 weeks, you've got the opportunity to attach yourself to this particular release. It's going out in 2 weeks. But all of this as activity happens in prod. The release creation may be a release manager, deployment request creation is a developer, but all of these activities happen in prod and are coordinated from prod, which then reaches down and activates these workflows in the lower environments.
Cool. So the release is created in prod. The update sets are created in dev, like normal, or wherever the development is working. Where do they get related to each other? Like, do I do that in dev in the update sets, or did I do it in prod in the release? I did not catch that.
Sure. So, yes, so in my case, when I created and luckily it's easy to do, when I created the deployment request, um, I was able to select the release. So the Platform Academy release. The reason I can't select it now is because it was already deployed, so it's obviously no longer valid. But I am able to.
And this is in dev.
Yeah, so I'm in dev technically. My work is in dev, but if you notice, I'm actually in prod. So
Oh,
this is a record producer in prod, and there's a URL that's saved in your sysconfig that takes you to that record producer in prod. So as a developer, what you'd want to do probably with your developers, give them very minimal access. So basically, they can only log in and access this record producer potentially if they were very minimal access. But then they could select which release they wanted to attach it to. Or let's say you don't want to do that. You don't trust the developers. So the release is optional. We don't let them submit that release. But what we can do is we could say, okay, if you can see, here's my list of unassigned DRs that don't have a release yet. And so what I can do is I could potentially, again, depending on your process, I could potentially go in here and say, okay, uh, well, maybe my report filter isn't right. I need to look into that. Okay, looks like my report filter isn't right. Okay, I'll go back to the old timey way. One second.
so it can happen in both, to
It
where
can happen
either
either
the
way. Yeah,
developer
right,
can do it in dev, or say your release manager can grab them from prod. That's cool.
right, right. Yep.
Fits
And so it may be
whatever
that I can
shape.
go here and I can have a filter that says, hey, show me all of my unassigned uh, unassigned releases, and I may go look at this and go, okay, testing a UR, and then I could go select which release I wanted this to be part of, right? And then show
Yep.
me all the active releases, that type of thing.
Nice. All right. Next one. Can you tie a release to multiple change requests from or for different functions? Or is it only one change request per release?
A deployment request per release?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so you can definitely do multiples. The example I was showing earlier was uh, the example I was showing earlier was and this is a good example, and then also had failures. But this one here, for example, had has three different DRs related, and each of those DRs may have multiple update sets. So, and it's flexible, so there's different ways to do it. One way may be again that you may want to group
And
all activity for this app PII for info reaction agent. You may want to group all those into one deployment request, right? So you may have a bunch of update sets, different developers, et cetera, group those together, and that way you can kind of organize by scope, basically, right? And then
and this
run
then
those.
connect to multiple change requests? Or is it just the one change?
So right now, and this has actually been a request that's very popular, and I'm pretty sure I can't be for sure, but right now the initial decision was made by the developers to put it onto the CR, onto from the release to the CR. But the reality is, change requests are probably more associated at the DR level. Um, so we've got plans to potentially change that. It would also be between us something you could do yourself pretty easily if you wanted to add the change request record to the DR. But I do think the model where the change request is on the DR makes more sense in a lot of ways.
Nice. All right. Our next question is what family release do I have to be on to use this?
I'm
Yokohama, Zurich.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so glad you asked. I meant to put that on the slide, so I didn't forget to tell you. This is Zurich only. So there's some foundational technologies starting in Yokohama that we started to roll out, but the core capabilities and the core features to make this work, unfortunately, require Zurich. So this will be for Zurich forward instances only. I'm
All
glad you
right.
asked that.
Does this functionality require a license?
Ooh, another good question. Man, I am not on my best on my best work today. Yes, this is a platform feature. and this will be available to everyone. And like I said, we'll even in Australia, we'll even have a version of App Engine Management Center for reporting and viewing these. That will be a platform feature at that point. Uh, App Engine will have like upgrades for certain features that will cost, but you'll be able to do this with deployment requests. And and the other important distinction, which for anybody who's maybe aware of this, is it's based on what's called Hermes, which is our Kafka implementation, and that is a paid service, but we do not charge we would not charge you for using uh, the data transfer for using that with our release ops. So it won't cost you anything to use it.
All right. Next one is how does this interact with delegated developer? In other words, if we sign a scoped app to a developer using that delegated developer capability, does the release op still work for moving that uh, code, that product between instances?
Yes. So this should be agnostic to kind of the at the very lowest level, like how the changes are being made, who those changes are being made for, that should be agnostic. The only thing that the person needs to be able to interact with the DRs. So if you decide you want the delegated developer to create DRs, deployment requests, is all they need is permission in to access and submit that record producer in prod. So as long as they have that permission and they have an update set that they're allowed to change to complete, they would then be allowed to create a deployment request. Some customers have talked about it. We don't have a lot of customers using it yet, of course, but some customers have talked about maybe having that coordinated through someone else who would gather the delegated developers work together and start the process. That could be an option too. But yes, there's nothing to stop a delegated developer other than just making sure they've got the right permissions.
Marvelous. And next one, sort of in that same vein of what's possible, is can you set up more than just the three environments? What if you also have project, train, different dev stacks, that type of thing?
So for other ServiceNow environments, basically.
Yes, other ServiceNow environments, but like, say your stack has five. You've got
Right. Yep.
prod and two devs
Yep.
and two tests, or whatever the structure may be.
Yes. 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 That's a great question. It doesn't. It's high on our list, and judging from our the results of our surveys here, it's just gotten even higher. Uh, uh, it's high on our list to give a demo of how to do that. It's definitely supported in terms of like technologically it's possible. What we don't have right now is we don't have, what I want to see change is we don't have a good demo, an example of that, right? Our example is very, dev test prod. And I think it would be important to a lot of people to see an example of how you configure that because it would require configuration of the um, configuration or customization um, of the playbooks to make that happen. But yes, it is possible. Um, and reach out to us. So my email is going to be on the last frame here, I believe. Did I forget to? I forgot to have my email. Anyway, yes, I'll have my email now. uh, but uh, but yes, it is possible you may need some support on that. Reach out to us, and we can do what we can to help you.
All right. And when will this out-of-box catalog item record producer setup be coming to customers? In other words, I'm taking that as what do I need to do to have that in my instance? Would it
You
be
just
on
need
Zurich?
to
And
yes, yes. So you just need to let me and what you just need to do is uh, install the application and the and I'll show you some links here. But what you just need to do is install the application. So when you install the application uh, in uh, in your environments, that record producer comes with it, as well as all of the capabilities that you need um, for each of these sub prod environments as well. Those all come with it. So um, let me what I'll do here is I will share you some links on your screen, and you can make a note of these URLs, because one of those is we have a readiness survey here. Um, uh, the uh, So we have a readiness survey here that will help you kind of understand whether or not you're ready to go. You do need 3 Zurich instances to set up the sample pipeline. The oops, oops, I lost my slide. Where is it? You do need 3 instances to set up pipeline. Here's a video of me showing you the demo that we just saw. You can request access from the store using this URL. And here, there's documentation and configuration steps here that help you with the setup. One of the challenges that we got right now is that the setup process is kind of difficult. There's about 13 steps to get it set up. We are working on a configurator tool that should hopefully be coming out soon that will help you with that config process. And then if you definitely need help, you can schedule a meeting with the product, with the configuration. You can schedule a meeting to help you get configured. And then you can also schedule a meeting with the product managers. So yeah, make a note of these URLs, and we're here to help you.
Perfect. And
So
will it be integrated fully with the developer workspace available through Innovations Lab? I'm not familiar with that, so
developer workspace. I'm not familiar with that either. So
all
it's
right, we're going to
saying,
say not planned currently, but maybe
yeah,
someday.
yeah, we do hope that it'll become more and more common as just kind of the standard way to do deployments. We're hoping to see integration eventually, although no specific plans yet with IDE, potentially even SDK, different ways to kind of get things into the pipeline from different sources.
Ooh, I like this question. I think it's excellent. Will this solution also allow it to control or at least identify plugin versions across all instances, especially like production, to ensure that the desired app and or plugin combinations are deployed before we deploy the configurations that are applicable to those?
Yep, that's a good question. So it is actually, you actually, and I want to, I'm going to demonstrate this in a
Is that a
future.
future academy?
It could be if it could, yeah, maybe it's Academy. I think it's simple enough though that it might just be a quick little 10-minute YouTube video. But yeah, it's actually, there's existing capabilities to attach plugins to update sets that were added. I can't remember, a couple releases back, and you can use those. That's a really good example. You can use those to attach a specific version of a plugin and have that deploy automatically. Um, so yes.
Excellent. And ooh, what are your tips for a just a quick overview of what would you say is the crawl, walk, run of implementing release ops? I know that's like a
Excellent.
huge question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The it's a brand new product. We've worked with a couple customers kind of pretty closely so far. Uh, it's not an excuse, but it's like the tool is flexible, but we haven't really had a chance to really exercise this a lot. I think the nice thing about this though is it is not destructive or impactful in that um, you you can install this, and basically all it does is it deploys update sets, right? And so you can install this, and if you wanted to say, hey, look, I'm not ready to take over my whole process, right? But I've got a brand new app. It's kind of small, like low consequence type of simple little app, maybe. Let's just try it with that app, right? And maybe you start just doing deployments for that particular app using this technique. The other developers, other than that button being there on the update set, may never even realize that it exists, right? You may find yourself saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and deploy everything to test using this mechanism, but I don't trust it to go to prod yet. You could totally do that. Just use a DR, deploy things to test, and then use the same process going on from there. Because again, ultimately, you just have update sets and test, right? And then you may use your own process to get from test to prod, for example. So yeah, this should be something that should be relatively low key and relatively safe to work with, and you don't have to like commit to doing all of your environment, all of your apps at once. But anybody
And
who's interested in using this, use this link here, that last link, and you know what? I should add my email address too. So I'll add my email address here too as well. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Um, so let us know, right? What you're trying to do, what your situation is. Um, because yeah, we want to hear from you.
all right, interesting one for more of the technical, but if an update set contained a notification that was attempting to be moved and it uh, deployment release such as accept remote update, will this automatically then pause the movement of the update set? So if something is not accepted through the tests, I guess, does that pause the movement of the update set? Does it, I'm gonna guess, maybe
Yes.
back it out? Does it never deploy? Like it just
Yes. Yeah, so it
okay.
stops it. It stops it. So that would be probably something that happens. That would it would any step along the way, it would stop the flow, and you would get a what's called a deployment request task. And the deployment request task would say, "Hey, there's been a conflict." You would then need to go resolve the conflict. So maybe you do accept remote or skip remote or whatever, and then you would take that record, the deployment request task, and you would switch that to complete. And when you switch that to complete, it tells the system that you've resolved it. And once you resolved it, then it can continue. If you decide that you can't fix it, you need to go back. You can tell it that you need new code and basically reset the whole thing, go back, patch it, fix it, and then send it on its way again.
Perfect. I have a follow-up question. Can you identify that before it's trying to move? Like when you attach it, can you test it so that you could remediate it earlier? Or does it only happen when you're actually trying to deploy it? When does the test happen? When does the check happen? Or
So in
does
the
that
default
depend
sample
on?
pipeline, so yeah, it actually happens when you're deploying to it could potentially happen. It does, we're not really so much doing a check. We are automating the update set application and preview.
Mhm.
And so the first opportunity for it to happen in our sample pipeline would be between dev and test. So it would go to test, and then within the test environment, the update set would get applied. The preview conflict would be found. You'd be notified. You resolve it. Then it'd be resolved in test. Then one thing that we've got we're working on, and we're not exactly sure exactly how it's going to work, but a common request has been, okay, well, if I remediate it in test and I encounter the same problem in prod, can I replay that decision? And we actually are working on something for that as well. So if you decide, hey, look, I'm intentionally trying to overwrite a newer file, you could tell it that in test. It would remember that, and then if it got to prod and encountered the same situation, it would replay that decision.
Awesome.
But it's a good question, though. Could we find it out earlier? And right now, because we're kind of working with the standard scheme, it doesn't really get identified until you do an update set preview on an environment you're deploying to.
All right, and we are running out of times, but we have some great questions here. Last one I'm going to do is the very quick, is this available to be installed in PDIs?
Never in the history of time will that ever be the case.
Would that be
Unfor-
because a PDI is a single instance?
yeah, and it's the way it works is this instance management framework is it's based on what's called a Kafka cluster. And what we have is we have a cluster. So if you're an employee who's got 5 instances, those 5 instances are
Mm.
part of are configured as part of our setup for your environments as a Kafka cluster. And the technology can only talk to other members of the cluster. All the PDI instances are standalone. There's no kind of concept of a cluster. And as a result of that, it will not work. It will not work with standalone instances like that. It doesn't work on GCC instances right now. However, the Kafka team is working on a version for that. I'm not exactly sure when that is coming, but I believe it is. It is a priority. So hopefully, before too long, but hopefully we'll be able to run this in government controlled environments.
Sounds good. All right. Let me go ahead and just wrap up by saying, John, thank you so much for bringing this information to us.
Thank
You've
you all.
already found for our attendees, the Platform Academy. There are 3 other amazing academies for more information. We have our AI Academy, our Platform Analytics Academy, and our Process Mining Academy, who we had a guest on Tuesday from that series. So great information in those other locations. Also want to remind you, I'm going to skip to our future sessions. With that, just as a reminder, in next week, we will not be having any sessions. So next slide, please. Trying to keep it to the short version. Next week, we will not be having any Academy episodes, but we will resume on Tuesday, the 18th, with getting started with Now Assist for search and chat on mobile, and then into ReleaseOps and ATF together. After that, we'll be off again for Thanksgiving and then back for the December sessions before our holidays start. And on that note, just thank you all for joining us. I hope you have an amazing weekend. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.